The sun was melting into the desert horizon when Luke Harland first spotted the lone Apache boy crawling across the sand, his body trembling, his breath barely a whisper lost in the wind. Luke had been riding 3 days without rest, chasing rumors of work, food, and a break from the loneliness that followed him like a stubborn shadow. His horse Dakota was all he had left after the war, his partner, his shield against the emptiness of the frontier. But when Luke saw the boy collapse, instinct overpowered survival. He leapt off Dakota and ran to him, realizing the child had a deep wound on his leg, poisoned with infection, and had likely been wandering alone for days. The boy muttered one word, water, before fainting into Luke's arms. The cowboy ripped open his canteen, forcing drops between the boy's cracked lips as the winds howled around them. Luke knew this wasn't just an injured traveler. This was the son of someone, and the Apaches didn't forgive easily. Still, he couldn't leave him. He loaded the boy onto Dakota's saddle and began the long walk toward the distant mesas, his boots sinking into sand, each step echoing the heavy truth that he was walking into Apache land alone, unarmed and carrying the chief's bloodline. Hours later, when the moon rose silver and unforgiving, shadows surrounded him, silent warriors, bows drawn, rifles glinting. Luke raised both hands slowly as they closed in. The chief stepped forward, carved with years of battle and wisdom. His eyes locked onto the boy slumped on the saddle, then onto the cowboy who stood exhausted, sweating and vibrating with the fear of death. Luke spoke quietly, found him dying. "I couldn't leave him," the men muttered. The tension grew thick enough to slice. The chief approached Dakota, placed a palm on his son's chest, and felt the faint heartbeat. The relief that washed across his stern face lasted only a moment before shifting to suspicion. "Why does a white man bring my son home?" Luke swallowed hard. "Because he needed help." The chief studied him deeply, then said words that cut like blades. "You walk into our land carrying my son because of honor, or because you want to live?" Luke didn't flinch. "Honor," he answered. The chief nodded slowly. "Then honor will judge you." The warriors seized Luke's arms, but the chief raised a hand to stop them. His voice echoed across the desert. "If you are a man of honor, give up your horse and walk back into the desert. The spirits will decide if you live." Luke froze. Dakota was everything, his life, his safety, his only friend. But the boy's life, and the chief's test, demanded sacrifice. With a trembling hand, Luke placed Dakota's reins into the chief's grasp. The horse nuzzled him softly, sensing the break. Luke whispered, "Take care of him." And then, without a word, he turned and walked into the darkness. Alone, thirsty and stripped of everything, behind him the Apache chief watched the silhouette of the cowboy fade. In his eyes flicker something rare, respect. That night Luke collapsed under the desert stars, unsure if he would rise again. The desert was a cruel judge, and Luke felt its verdict closing in as the night deepened. His lips split from dryness, each step heavier than the last, the sand shifting beneath him like a living thing eager to swallow him whole. But even as exhaustion pressed against his bones, Luke kept walking, driven by the stubborn grit that had guided him through war, famine, heartbreak, and every loss a man could endure. The silence of the desert was broken, only by the distant howl of coyotes and the whisper of wind dragging across stone. Luke's mind drifted back to every memory. Dakota had carried him through the battles, the storms, the peaceful dawns. He wondered if the horse would forget him or if, somewhere deep inside, the animal would understand the sacrifice its owner had made. His vision blurred, shapes twisted. He stumbled to the ground more than once but forced himself up, refusing to let the desert take him without a fight. As the moon dipped low and the stars began to fade, Luke collapsed for the final time, face down in the sand. His breath slowed. His heart thudded weakly. And then, footsteps. At first he thought it was the wind playing tricks, but then the sound grew, steady and purposeful, accompanied by the soft thumps of many hooves. Luke rolled onto his back, blinking into the dim blue dawn. Silhouettes appeared over the dunes. Apache riders, dozens of them, the chief at their lead. The warriors formed a circle around the dying cowboy. The chief dismounted and walked toward him, studying Luke's broken state. "You walked far," the chief said. Most men would have begged, cried, lied. Luke coughed, struggling to breathe. "You said honor would decide." The chief nodded slowly. His stern expression softened. "The spirits have spoken. You gave what no man gives. Your only horse. Your only friend. You gave him to save a son that was not yours. Luke's eyes fluttered. He was just a boy. The chief knelt beside him. And you are a man of honor. With a sharp whistle, the Apache warriors brought forward a water skin, herbal poultices and blankets. Some lifted Luke carefully while others treated his cracked skin and bleeding feet. The chief watched in silence. When Luke's strength began returning, the chief extended a hand, not as a ruler but as a brother. Come with us, rest, eat, live. Luke stared at him confused. I thought I was being punished. The chief shook his head. You were being measured. They carried Luke back to the village, where women brought warm broth, elders chanted healing prayers, and the chief's wife personally tended to him. Days passed and Luke regained his strength. The boy he had saved visited him daily, sitting silently grateful beyond words. The village grew to respect the cowboy, who had walked into the desert with nothing but honor in his heart. And when Luke finally stood again, ready to travel, the chief approached him with a mysterious expression. You gave your only horse, the chief said, and a gift given in honor must be repaid with honor. Luke didn't understand. But the next morning would change everything. The sun was just rising when the chief summoned Luke to the edge of the village. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of sage and dust. Luke expected a farewell. Maybe Dakota returned to him. Maybe a small token of gratitude. But what he saw instead made his breath catch in his throat. Lined across the desert plain were 50 horses. 50 towering, strong, breathtakingly beautiful Apache-bred thoroughbreds, their coats gleaming like polished copper under the morning light. Their hooves stamped the earth with controlled power, and their manes danced like fire. The chief stood before them, arms crossed, pride radiating from him like heat. Luke stared, eyes wide, voice shaking. Chief, and what is this? The chief stepped forward. These are yours. All of them. Luke stumbled back. I can't take these. This is a fortune, an army, a kingdom. It is repayment, the chief replied simply. For a gift no man gives. For a courage no man shows. For the life of my son. Luke's jaw trembled. He looked at the sea of horses, then at the chief. I only did what was right. And because you did, what is right when no one was watching? The chief said. The spirits bless you. At that moment, Dakota trotted forward from the herd, nudging Luke's chest with a familiar warmth. Luke's eyes burned with tears. The chief smiled faintly. He never forgot you, and we never will. The village gathered around as Luke walked through the herd, each horse bowing its head gently as if acknowledging him. The Apache people stood in silence, honoring the man who had shown them a rare truth that honor was the greatest wealth a man could carry. The chief placed a hand on Luke's shoulder. Wherever you ride, cowboy, our land is open to you. You are a friend to the Apache, a brother in spirit. Luke mounted Dakota, surrounded by 50 powerful thoroughbreds. As he rode out, he turned back to face the village, men, women, and children raising their hands in respect. Luke Harland had walked into the desert with nothing. Now he rode away with more than wealth. He rode away with honor, legacy, and a bond that would be remembered for generations. And as Dakota galloped forward, Luke whispered to himself, sometimes the greatest riches come from the things we give away.